Mistakes in life, right? So we're introducing Mary Helen Kelly and Kathleen Kelly. I don't have a middle name for that. Yeah. How long have you lived here, and how long has Mary Helen lived here?
In Desert?
And let's just say in this house right now.
In this house since 2000, so 23 years.
And where did you live before you lived at this house?
So, where to begin?
Okay.
My family first lived in the desert in the late 50s and early 60s. At that point, we lived in Palm Springs when it was still a friendly little village. I'm sure it's still friendly. Dad took a promotion, which sent us back to the LA basin. But he was itching to get back to the desert, as was the whole family. So in 1978, he secured a position out here as division manager for the telephone company. And at that point, the folks bought a house on Fairway Drive, right here in Palm Desert.
Now, you mentioned that your father had an inkling that this place was going to go somewhere. Palm Desert was going to be something. Now, how did he know, and what? Did you mention that?
I did. Dad first came out to the desert when he worked on construction crews with the telephone company in the late 40s, early 50s, after he was discharged from the Air Force. And he could see the natural beauty of this area. And he could already see how quickly the LA basin was losing some of its charm as a function of population growth. So he fully expected everything we see by way of population growth. And when he came back as construction manager in the late 50s, he just pushed his company very, very hard to invest in infrastructure.
Like what kind of infrastructure?
Well, utilities, of course, require more than just the wire from the house to the supply. It requires the supply first. So that kind of infrastructure.
So with him, he was implemental in infrastructure such as electrical wires, plumbing, or,
This is all relevant to the telephone service.
I see. I got you.
And he was very instrumental in getting everything underground so there weren't those poles all over the place.
Yes. He had taste.
If you want to irritate him, just refer to a telephone pole. He would quickly correct you to say, that's a power pole.
Oh, okay.
The electric company might not be quite as advanced.
Yeah. So he wanted the electricity to be hidden, right? Well, was he successful? I mean, there's a lot of things that didn't have that.
His area of responsibility at that time was the telephone company.
I see. So was he like a private company, or did he work for the phone company?
At that time it was California Water and Telephone Company, which became part of General Telephone.
So when did you all, you moved to the desert, I think twice.
Yes.
So when was the first time that the family moved to the desert? The first, the year?
58.
58, and the whole family, who was in the family that moved here exactly?
Just mom and dad, me, my older brother, the cat, and the dog.
Mom, what was that like? It was
Well, we loved it here, and we didn't mind the heat because it was an area where a lot of very interesting and fun people moved. And it was a good community to be active in, and so we just adopted this community as our home.
Did you have neighbors at that time, or close neighbors, when you first moved here?
Well, they weren't full-time people.
Oh.
We had very few full-time people then because of the summers. But gradually people started staying when the air conditioning developed and was a better and more inexpensive way of cooling your home.
Well, when you first moved here, what kind of cooling did you have?
Just the water cooler.
Like
We didn't
like a
have the
swamp, you mean?
cooler, the modern cooler that we have now.
No, it's funny. I have no memory of being uncomfortable as a child, even though today it's hard to picture being at school in June without air conditioning. But we were in school in June without air conditioning. I have no recall of ever being uncomfortable. As a result, though, Mom and I are both uncomfortable if it's under 70 because we got very well acclimated.
And you're comfortable too. It's very comfortable here, I have to say. But anyway, well, what grammar school did you go to?
I went to Catherine Finchy. And then they rearranged the school district, so I also went to Kauai.
Where's Kauai? Yeah, where's it?
Can you describe where it was, Mom? It's further to the south. As a kid,
kind of south of Palm Springs.
As a kid, I just got on the bus
and
and went there.
What was that like? So you would go to school, you would get to school by bus, right?
Yes.
You weren't, and where would you catch the bus?
It was a short walk from the house. And there was a bus stop on each side of the house. I remember clearly one day I forgot something. And I ran back to the house, and while I was just coming out of the house and I could see the bus going from one stop to the next. So I had to really hustle. But I would say that issue, transportation to school, is one front where the passage of time has caused us to go backwards instead of forwards. One of our biggest traffic congestion problems in Palm Desert is, of course, parents picking up or dropping off from the schools because we don't have the same network of school buses to get kids to and from school. So I hope in my lifetime we can get that one better.
What's your resolution for that? What do you think should happen?
Well, because the funding doesn't seem to be there to fund school buses exclusively, it will have to be part of an integrated transportation system that's transporting more than just students. And in my current civic life, one of the assignments I enjoy most is working with Sunlight and Transit because it's so forward-thinking about trying to find those next decade solutions.
That's lovely.
Right now, Sunlight has funding for a rides-on-demand service in parts of the Coachella Valley where the population density doesn't support a bus route. including the north part of Palm Desert. So that's just one example of the kind of thing we have to experiment with to get to a better outcome. But back in the early 90s, 1993, when my dad was on the board of Sunlight Transit, they resolved to work toward zero emissions in public transit, which was a huge innovation at that time. And as a consequence, our little Sunlight Transit Agency became the first transit agency in the country to have 100% CNG, which at the time was the best technology available. And Mom was there in 1994 when that fleet of new buses arrived.
Really? What was that like?
It was a big celebration. A caravan of those buses came cross country here. The Sunlight Transit.
Were you there when they arrived? You mean like there was a ceremony when they arrived? Okay, what was that like?
It was a big deal.
Where was that? What was the location?
At Thousand Palms, where the Sunlight major facility is located.
What was that like? What was that day like when you saw those come through?
You answer, Kathleen. I didn't hear very well.
What she wants to know what it was like. What did you feel like when you saw those buses arrive?
Well, I was happy. We were all happy standing out there cheering because they had been driven, from Canada.
Was it in the newspaper?
I hope so.
Yeah.
If not, they missed a good story. And the great story is that Sunlight has stayed at the very, very front of emerging technology toward zero emissions. So most recently, they secured a grant to establish a microgrid in which solar will be used to generate hydrogen, basically to extract hydrogen from water. And then that energy can be stored as liquid hydrogen instead of storing solar in a battery. And then
I love this.
Fuel cell technology can be used, as it is currently on several of the buses at a time when solar is not available. So that's really the most promising technology of today and tomorrow. And one of the absolute centers everyone's watching literally throughout the world is right here at the home of our transit agency.
I did not know that, and I am just thrilled to know that.
It's pretty exciting, and it's just one way in which our community has really exercised leadership when it comes to taking care of the earth. One of the other big projects my dad worked on was advocating in Sacramento to get permission first as an experiment to use golf carts on the street. And that was in the early 90s also. So when that first happened, we declared Palm Desert the electric vehicle capital of the world, because literally with all the golf courses, there's a huge number of golf carts. So securing permission for those to be used on the street instantly made electric transportation more accessible. So that's just
Absolutely.
another
noticed
example.
The things that you're mentioning, I've noticed, but I didn't know why. Like the bus, for example, it looks modern, and the topography looks modern, and every time I look at it, I think something's going on there. That's so funny. I could tell from their logo,
Right.
So I'm going to have to find out more. Thank you. I'm sorry to say something, but I'm really impressed with that.
Right.
So let's see. Let's talk about Dad a little bit. Dad's name was Dick. Okay.
Richard Sullivan Kelly to the family. Dick Kelly at work and in his civic life.
Now wait a minute. He had this formal name with the family?
No, Richard. His mother called him Richard.
Oh, she did.
My mother
did
called
you call him Richard too?
Yes. You called Dad Richard.
Yes, and so did his parents.
Oh.
But the community called him Dick Kelly.
Oh. Yeah, I see that. Now, when you were growing up, where did you graduate high school?
Well, Dad got a promotion which took the family back to the dreaded LA Basin. That's how I'll refer to it now. So I ended up going to high school in the San Fernando Valley. So I'm a true Valley girl. If you see these other ones, they're cheap imitations. We true Valley girls do not make excessive use of the word like. So.
Well, you learned all about other places, that's for sure. And then you moved, so you graduated high school in El Monte.
No, that's where my parents both grew up in El Monte. Went to high school there, were high school sweethearts there. And this was high school for them was the beginning of World War II. So literally, when boys turned 18, they disappeared from high school. They were drafted. Yeah. That's a big part of what my mother experienced growing up.
When a boy turned 18, he was drafted and he left school even if he had a few months left to graduate. Then when he came home, he had to take classes to get his high school diploma.
Now, Dad was able to graduate. He went down to the Marines to volunteer. The line was too long, and patience was not his strong suit. Anyone watching this who knew him will smile. So he said to himself, well, I'll just wait to be drafted. So he was drafted, became a part of the Army Air Corps at that time. The Air Force had not become a separate branch, and was trained as a bomber pilot, which he thoroughly enjoyed. That was one of the highlights of his life, because he thoroughly enjoyed aviation, thoroughly enjoyed his service life. So, and as a consequence of needing to go through all that pilot training, the war ended before he was shipped out. So he didn't actually serve abroad, and that could have something to do with his longevity and the fact I got to be born. So I'm very thankful the line was too long at the Marines that day. Bless everyone who served. Like most young men, he was eager to serve. Most young men at that time, he was eager to serve and would have been happy to go, but everyone was also happy that the war ended. Meanwhile, my mother, who's a very, very determined person, wanted to go to college, and there were no funds for that, but she got a job as a governess with a wealthy family so that she could go to UCLA. And it was a pretty hard life, but she made it work. You want to talk about UCLA at that time?
Well, it was a small school at that time, because I'm 98 years old. And so when I went to UCLA, it wasn't a very large university. It was a smaller school.
It's funny. I went to law school in Berkeley. So every time Cal plays UCLA, she thinks UCLA are the underdogs. She still thinks of UCLA as the little upstart school, and I can't convince her that their athletic programs have made them the favorite.
Boy, that was quite something.
But
did you live in the dorm? Did you?
No. She had to work as a governess.
Oh, that's right.
And live with the family where she was working.
And
so I got my board and room and $15 a month.
Really?
And they took, this is one challenging part, the woman she was working for asked for all of her food rations to use in their house. So she ended up...
She had to pool her...
Well, she left UCLA after 2 years because they thought Dad would be shipped out, and so they wanted to get married. Then the war ended, and they were a young couple with no food rations because she had to turn them in when she was working. But I'll tell you another story about my folks, which I think really shows who they were and contributed to who my father became. When he got out of the service, they didn't have the money to buy a house. They were able to borrow just enough from family to buy a lot. And Mom said to Dad, "Don't worry. We will go to construction sites and we will watch them and we will learn each step of building a house. And after we've observed a step, we'll go back and do it." So that's exactly what they did. They watched a construction site creating the forms to lay the foundation. They went and did it. They watched laying a foundation, they went and did it. And they built their first house that way. I really think my mom helped to make Dad the person he was by encouraging him to just tackle any challenge. And he certainly did that in his public life.
How would you describe your husband?
How do I describe my husband? Well, he was a very gentle man, and he was very honest and kind. And he was also fun, and he was energetic, and he was ambitious. He was all the good things.
And he could be ornery.
Yeah.
Mother got a raw deal because when he died in 2010, we had bought this house together 50-50. So I was already a 50% owner in this house. And when he died in 2010, I decided I would claim my half and move in. Well, lo and behold, I have all my dad's bad habits. So she's stuck with all his bad habits, but she doesn't have his company.
Well, how would you sum it up with your dad? I mean, when your dad passed away, where is he buried? Is that okay if I ask a few
Sure.
questions like that?
Sure. Mom's father bought 4 spaces at Rose Hills in Whittier. It's in Whittier, right? He bought them up on a hill, fantasizing that when he passed, he'd have a great view. Well, the trees have grown up, so there's no great view. But he intended for those 4 spots to go to both of my grandparents, my father and my mother. So, and many, many of our extended family are also at Rose Hills. So it's easy to spend a day there just giving thanks for folks from our family.
Mom, you used to work at the Bank of America smoke tree.
Yes. I transferred there from Monrovia, and then I transferred from Monrovia into the San Fernando Valley. So I worked quite a few years at Bank of America.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
I was operations officer. That's in charge of the not the loans, everything but the loans.
All the things we regular customers need, you know.
What kind of clients came in there?
Pardon?
What kind of customers came in there?
It was a mixed group of people. The major part of the clients were just normal people that needed banking services.
Was that the time when the banks were giving away, remember how you'd say, come in here and open a checking account and you get a toaster or something like that?
No.
No.
The banks, I worked for Bank of America, and we never gave away anything.
No, but it was the era in which an old person who was struggling could go to the bank and someone would help them balance their checkbook, you know, all of that good old-fashioned service.
Yeah.
And I will volunteer this about Mom. She still sends Christmas cards to over 500 people. So when folks reply, I always ask her who that is. And a good number of them are people who worked for her at the bank, who so treasured the fact that as a supervisor, she cared about their personal issues and challenges and helped a lot of them through those just by giving good advice. That's one of the things people seem to appreciate about her wherever she has worked or volunteered, that she's a good listener and she gives really honest, seasoned, wise guidance.
That's wonderful. Now,
not that I pay attention to any
well,
of it.
that's because you're related. Is that the one, the Bank of America in Palm Springs? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Is that the one on the corner? Which one was
The
it?
Smoke Tree branch.
Oh, the Smoke Tree branch.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Was
When
there
I
a shopping center
transferred
there?
out, the manager of the operations officer at Smoke Tree branch was retiring. So I got to transfer right into her job.
What else was in that little shopping center then? Do you remember?
I'm sorry, I didn't
That's
hear.
okay.
What was in the shopping center?
Well, the shopping center just opened up with practically what it has now, but it was brand new.
Was that shopping center yeah, that was okay.
There was one on Highway 111 that
Okay.
goes out of town.
Well, it's been raining a lot, and the news is about flooding. So, what about this assuring of the flood control here in the desert?
When we get up, I'll give you something I printed out, which I'm sure is well documented in the Historical Society's archives. In 1976, there was a horrible storm, ironically called Tropical Storm Kathleen, that caused mudslides through this part of town coming down 74. And quite literally, there's a picture in the Desert Sun of that era where mud's halfway up the house. And in the late 70s, after that, when the folks had purchased on Fairway Drive, we had more huge storms. She'll tell you a funny story about one of those in a moment. But one of the things I am most impressed with in Palm Desert's history is how our city responded. When there's a big storm today, you don't hear about cars getting stuck in Palm Desert very often. And that is because Carlos Ortega, one of our very, very important city managers, secured the necessary declarations to deploy redevelopment funds and create reliable flood control throughout the city. Today, there's a key bridge on Portola over the Wash named the Richard S. Kelly Bridge. And it's named for Dad because he worked so hard in his various regional capacities with CVAG, Riverside County Transportation Commission, Southern California Association of Governments, to make sure that that project was funded. And Palm Desert has not been quick to annex new territory because the city has always wanted to make sure it has the funds to bring flood control and other infrastructure up to the existing level in the city before embracing more territory. So there's still work to be done down in Palm Springs. There's still work to be done in La Quinta, but we can all give thanks on a stormy day. The past leaders of Palm Desert got ahead of the storms and have really invested appropriately in flood control.
Boy, is that important.
You want to tell her about the night my dog woke you up?
And she was gone on a trip somewhere, and I was taking care of her dogs, and it jumped right on my chest in the middle of the night and was barking at me. And I couldn't get it off, and it took me out to the door, and the waters, it had rained so much, and the waters had started coming down from the mountain, and the pool was full, and it was overflowing and almost coming into the house. So I went out and dug a ditch to the street to get the water out of the backyard.
Oh.
But the dog was letting me know there was trouble.
Oh.
Dad and I were on a rafting trip down the Colorado River, and Mom was puppy sitting, so she got left to take care of the storm. That was before all of the investments I just described.
The flood control here, as opposed to flood control of any other town along the Coachella Valley, is that especially tended to? You know, it seems like more than Palm Springs. I don't know.
Well, as I said, there is some important work that needs to be done, especially in Palm Springs, because of it's the access road for people trying to get to Desert Regional Hospital from Desert Hot Springs.
Yeah.
And one of the things I enjoy most about the desert as an elected person is the regional collaboration. And there's a great appreciation that, not to make a pun since we're talking about flood control, but that a rising tide floats all boats. That our cities and the tribes are all interconnected, and we need for everyone to thrive. So right now, the focus of regional funding and our funding asks from the state and the federal government are to address that need in Palm Springs.
Over the years, you're proud of some of the developments that have happened, but what are some of the ones that make you feel especially proud?
I am deeply proud of the way in which Palm Desert has developed its parks. As recently as the early 80s, there really were no public parks here, and Palm Desert very thoughtfully planned and reserved space, not just for the one regional park at Civic Center, but for a regional park to the east and a regional park to the north as that becomes populated, and small neighborhood parks in every single part of the city. Really being ahead of all of this conversation now about walkability in neighborhoods. Everyone wants to be able to walk to pleasant destinations. Well, it's another front, quite frankly, where Palm Desert was ahead in saving the space and making the investments so that we would have that wonderful open space, recreational opportunities, exercise opportunities as we build out our vacant space. I was just at opening day for Little League and softball this past Saturday. Anybody who has any doubt about the worth of publicly funded baseball fields should go to opening day and see all the kids and families out having a wonderful, wholesome time. Money could not be better spent. And Mom was on the Parks and Recreation Commission for the better part of 12 years, right?
Wait a minute, arts in the schools or arts?
Parks and
parks,
Recreation,
okay.
just like you were on the Cultural Arts Committee.
Okay.
Where the planning goes on for all of that.
Is that Coachella Valley or was that?
No, for Palm Desert.
For Palm Desert, okay. You've witnessed decisive moments in this community that changed history, at least for the local history. And what might some of them be? Well,
clearly, the opening of the mall was a major development for the economy. When I was growing up in Palm Springs, you traveled to Indio to shop at the Yellow Mart, which is still there. In fact, Dad, there was one kind of pants he could only find at the Yellow Mart, so he still went back to the Yellow Mart to the day of his death. But the mall here in Palm Desert became really the go-to shopping destination with a tremendous infusion of sales tax to help support all these great things I've been talking about. Now, of course, with the influence of online sales, we need to re-envision that space and shift some of the use from retail to potentially condominiums, entertainment destinations, uses that will draw people there to support the shops and the restaurants. And the city's very aggressively moving in that direction.
Great. I was wondering.
Yep.
And what about one of your many favorite places in Palm Desert? Desert Willow.
Where is your favorite place in Palm Desert?
Desert Willow.
And why?
Because my husband worked so hard to get it there.
So tell me, how did that idea start?
Well, he started it as an open space, you know, and it's a wonderful spot now because service clubs can meet there, and the chamber often meets there. They used to meet there every time, but now they're kind of scattering their meetings around.
No, his thinking was that, and again, always trying to think of the future. You need to have a multitude of ways. If your economy is tourism driven, you need to have a multitude of ways to attract folks to our location. El Paseo attracts the shoppers. There will always be a segment of the population that's attracted by excellent quality golf. Of course, that proportion rises, waxes and wanes. It grew, thankfully, during the pandemic. So he wanted to see the city build a top quality golf course that could be an economic driver for our tourism economy. But he wanted to do more than that because, as I said before, our community has always been in the lead when it comes to environmental issues. So that course was actually on the cover of Smithsonian Magazine because it was so forward-thinking in the use of drought-resistant landscaping and recycled water, elaborate system to maximize the use of recycled water, so that it can be selectively lush and green without a huge impact on our resources.
Give me another of your favorite places.
Well, it's hard to beat just taking a walk any place in Palm Desert because something's always blooming. And more often than not, the mountains are in view unless it's exceptionally stormy. So the whole city is my favorite place. Do you have another favorite place?
What is your favorite place?
Well, after Desert Willow, I just said to go for a walk anywhere in this city.
I think Mom thought of something.
I think so too.
Well, that's my favorite place too.
All right.
I'm hesitating because I don't know if we're allowed to advertise, but the place she has to go to most is Casuelas Cafe.
And I'm a good friend of Ray.
The one in Palm Desert, right?
Right here.
Yeah, but it's a good restaurant and the food's wonderful.
Good.
I knew if I got her going, she'd...
Well, you like to help a friend too.
That
Go
is
to their
right.
restaurant.
What kind of legacy do you see that for yourself that you would, when people thought of you, when they look back, you hope that they would think of your time here, as the mayor, that they think of you and something, a specific event or things that happened?
No, I heard a very, very wise comment at a memorial service recently. The speaker said, "No one will remember what you do, but they will remember how you made them feel." And I hope for at least some time after I'm gone, there will be folks who continue to approach life with optimism and confidence because I helped to encourage them. When the folks had their place over on Fairway Drive, Mom cooked a Christmas lunch to which she invited every single city employee, plus lots of other people that Dad related to in his civic life. So it was easily more than 200 people. Did all the cooking by herself. I went to a service of remembrance for Buford Kreitz recently, and the fellow who helped me park was still raving about her pecan pie. But Mom, just before Leslie got here, you were telling me about the fellows from Public Works the first time they came. You want to tell that story?
Well, they drove up in their truck and they were out there changing their shoes from their work shoes to their good shoes. And I was thinking they didn't need to change their shoes to come into my house, but they did. And I thought that was very thoughtful of them.
But they really looked forward to it because, of course, there were waves of people, and the Public Works folks start the earliest, so they were usually in the first wave, and there was always plenty of food.
What kind of food did you make?
Well, I made baked ham and I made baked turkey breasts. And I was a great big feast like you get at Thanksgiving.
You made tamales?
Oh, yes, I made tamales too.
And enchiladas?
Tamales and enchiladas.
And then lots of homemade cheesecake.
Ooh.
Pecan pies. It just went on and on and on.
I spent a lot of time cooking the week before.
And I enjoyed the leftovers.
Oh, I know. Now, what time of year was that? You said
Christmas.
Oh, it was Christmas.
It was
okay.
the week before Christmas.
Yeah.
But the people that were at the city then still remember it. Every time I see them, they said they sure miss my parties.
Oh.
But when they moved here, this place is smaller. So it was the logical time to bring that chapter to a close.
Well, I didn't have a place to store all the food. There we had a motorhome.
Oh.
And it had a big refrigerator in the motorhome. And then I had a motorhome in the garage. I mean, I had a refrigerator in the garage, and then I had one in the kitchen. Here I only have one place for one, and I'd never be able to have a dinner like I had there.
Well, and realistically, her arthritis was usually kicking up for a good solid week after all that exertion. So it was probably about time, too.
So how many years did you say you did that for the Christmas?
Right around 15 years, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to say anything else?
Yeah. Mom really wanted to share about the city's choice to donate land for a CSU campus. You want to talk about that, Mom?
Yeah, because your dad was very important in the saving of land for the campus, and he was all for education. And he wanted Palm Desert to be well, basically the Coachella Valley to be the center of education for this part of the state. So he made sure there was plenty of room for the schools. So the city donated over 200 acres out there where the university is being built.
Up until now, it has been the only campus in the CSU system 100% funded without state expenditure. The land was given by Palm Desert, the buildings through philanthropy. And this past year, we were successful in securing a commitment of $79 million from the state for a student center, which is really the key to increasing enrollment so that it can become a freestanding campus. That's one of many fronts where the Palm Desert Council was quite united. And I would say the secret sauce of Palm Desert Council has been that very diverse people have kept national politics out of local decision making, and it's produced some pretty unanimous consensus and collaboration to move us forward locally.